What's up, friends? I'm U.S. Army veteran ThatChrisChaos. So for this episode, this is the very first episode of a new series that I'm going to try doing on this channel. As what I'll do in each episode is I'm going to feature a different MOS in the United States Army. The video will feature maybe someone that was in the Army or currently in the Army that is talking about that MOS and what you can expect from that MOS if you are interested in it or just curious about it, I guess. So for this very first episode, we're going to do my MOS that I had when I was in the United States Army, which is an 88 Mike, a motor transportation operator. A little bit of background and my experience with being an 88 Mike. I was an 88 Mike from 1999 till 2010. During my time in the Army, I was stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas, JSA, Korea, and Fort Carson, Colorado. While stationed in Colorado, I deployed to Iraq twice. So let's start off with the training. I went to basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, but an 88 Mike can really go almost anywheres for their basic training. My AIT was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and that is still where they currently do 88 Mike MOS training, otherwise known as AIT. Back in 1999, it was 5 weeks. For some strange reason on the Army's website, it says that it's 10 weeks of training, but I was talking to a soldier that went through AIT like 6 months ago, and they said it was 6 weeks. So you can expect MOS training or AIT to be 6 weeks for an 88 Mike. During that time frame, it's almost like 6 weeks of, I guess you could say, driver's training. You're going to do a lot of like classroom environment as well as hands-on with different vehicles. There's only going to be a few vehicles you're going to get to learn. You're not going to learn every vehicle that the Army has. Some vehicles they want you to learn with your unit because not everybody's going to drive that same vehicle. But they're going to do things like the LMTV. I believe they still do the tractor trailer vehicles. And you're going to do the LHS or the PLS. And mixed in like with that hands-on training and that classroom training, you're going to learn how like a convoy works, how to do a little bit of basic soldiering with being an 88 Mike, probably do some different daytime driving and nighttime driving. And then once you are done, you'll move on to your first duty station. Now, your first duty station, there's a numerous of places that you could possibly be stationed as an 88 Mike. Now, I do know that Fort Huachuca in Arizona is actually a very difficult one to get for 88 Mike. I tried to get that at one point in time, and I found out at the time that there was only 2 slots available for an 88 Mike. So it's probably fairly difficult to be an 88 Mike stationed in Fort Huachuca. So my first duty station was in Fort Riley, Kansas with the 113 Armor. While I was there, because I was an armor unit, we did a lot of stuff with ammo for the tankers. So it meant a lot of times, going out to the ranges, out to gunnery, to haul ammunition for the tanks to do gunnery with. Additionally to that, you would also haul a lot of like parts for vehicles to pick them up from one building to take to your motor pool so that the mechanics have those parts to be able to fix vehicles. And while I was in Kansas, that was usually one of the primary things we would do, either hauling ammo or hauling parts. You don't go like cross country, across the United States, nothing like that. You're sticking to your post. That's where you're stationed at. You're usually doing stuff around that area, wherever the training area is at, wherever main post is at, to pick up ammo, to take them to the ranges, to pick up parts from wherever your parts come in from, and things like that. Things like that's going to be around the area, nothing cross country or anything. And that was a very similar type of job that I also had while I was stationed in Fort Carson, Colorado. Things like hauling ammo, parts. We'd also a lot of times do like concertina wire when we take it out to the field to issue to the units, so they had concertina wire to build the perimeter, build whatever they're using. But essentially in garrison in the United States, you're just doing whatever they need to be hauled for your unit. If they need to pick something up that's large, then it's possible they're going to talk to the transportation section to use one of their trucks to go pick this item up, bring it to the motor pool wherever it needs to go, bring stuff out to training. And as an 88 Mike, that's kind of your go-to job, is to transport equipment, supplies, and all that stuff for training or for whatever it may be needed for. As an additional duty, a lot of times 88 Mikes will also be bus drivers. It'll usually be maybe only a couple of people like in your platoon, in your section. But usually they'll want somebody to want to go through the little class that's usually offered on base to learn how to drive a bus and get a bus license. Because a lot of times they need buses to haul soldiers to training, and they want one of the 88 Mikes, one of the transportation people, to have the license for driving the bus to haul soldiers back and forth to training that may be needed. I actually had to do that, and sometimes it worked out to some pretty good advantages. Because sometimes they may have had to do like some crazy road march or something, and they needed somebody to haul the soldiers out to where they're going to do the road march and then bring them back. So I didn't have to do the road march. I would just haul them over to where they're doing the road march and then meet them at the very end to pick them all up. Also, a lot of times in the field, maybe I might get stuck being a bus driver, and you would do things like take people back to main post who had like appointments for like dentists or medical appointments or whatever the case might be. And so you'd bring them back for their appointments while everybody else is in the field. And you kind of had a little bit of free time to kind of run around while those people are doing their appointments, going to eat Burger King or going to the PX or doing whatever, and then take them back out to the field while everybody had been trained all day. So sometimes it had its advantages. It sounds like it sucks being a bus driver in the Army, but occasionally it had some perks to it, I guess. Next, let's talk about being an 88 Mike in the field. So in the field, you're going to be doing somewhat similar stuff to what you would do being deployed, but not usually the exact same stuff. A lot of times I still did similar things like hauling ammo, hauling supplies. We'd also do things like log packs. Log packs are just transportation missions to bring supplies to other units. So you may have a couple platoons that are farther out in the training area, and you have to, escort maybe the chow. Maybe you have to bring the chow in your truck. The DFAC people give you these big tubs called mermites, and you put them in your truck, and then you haul those out to the units that are maybe away from where you're at. You'll take them, you'll drop them off. Somebody in their unit usually serves the chow. You're not also having to serve the chow typically. You're usually just dropping off that food. They're getting chow. Once they're done with chow, maybe you're bringing back the empty mermites, or maybe you're doing a round robin where you're going to go and drop off food to one unit, go around to another unit, and then come back around and start picking up all the empty mermites. Along with that, you usually have the fuelers with you that are also dropping off fuel, maybe some people that is carrying ammo to drop off some resupply for ammo. In training environment, a lot of times it's just blanks. But if that's going along with like gunnery, then you may also be dropping off maybe some ammunition for gunnery or something. And then anything else. There's times where maybe you're dropping off mail, sometimes where you're dropping off maybe some parts, maybe have your maintenance detached from where you're at, and some of them are attached with the different platoons for like the tankers or whatever the case might be, and you have to drop off some parts to them so they can fix some vehicles. So it's going to be different things like that. It kind of missions like usually log packs are one of the main primary things that you do inside the field as an 88 Mike, taking supplies to different platoons that are scattered throughout the training area. Now, when you're not stationed in the United States, say for example I was stationed in Korea, they're going to be doing somewhat similar things to the United States, but it'll be a little bit different because usually you have to work with some of the local national stuff that's happening. Sometimes you have to go off post inside of that country to move some transportation of things, and so it's a little bit different than when you're moving things on post or off post in the United States. So like when I was in Korea, I actually had the option to either be a bus driver, because that's what the 88 Mikes did while stationed on the DMZ up by the border of North Korea, South Korea. I really want to drive the buses for the tours, so I volunteered to work in the fuel section. So I drove the fuel trucks going around, topping off different fuel tankers to do things like, power the hot water heater and other things that, had to run the fuel to run like generators and stuff. But other units like farther south and everything, they would do still field problems, and they would have to kind of train as if, something was going to happen with North Korea or whatever, and they would do different field environments where they would transport maybe still food, very similar things that you would do back in the United States. Next, let's talk about being an 88 Mike while deployed to a combat zone. So I deployed twice to Iraq. Both deployments were a little bit different in different ways. My first deployment, I was deployed to northern Iraq. While deployed in that area, we still did a lot of log packs like you did in training. You would take supplies and food and other things out to COPs, which are otherwise known as combat outposts. So we would have part of our units that are out these combat outposts, and we had to take chow out to them, we'd have to take parts out to them, other supplies they needed, and then other missions that needed to be done in country. During that deployment, I also did a lot of humanitarian aid missions. So we would take things like beds and food and other supplies out to local nationals in the area. And sometimes these missions were done during different times of the day. Sometimes they'd be early in the morning, sometimes they'd be late at night, sometimes they'd go overnight, and then you'd get some time during the day to kind of recover and sleep. So the hours would be pretty mixed up and pretty crazy while deployed. They could be really any time of the day. And that's different from the United States, where in the United States, usually you're doing missions during the day unless you're in the field and you're doing some kind of training for a deployment. Now, my second deployment, I was deployed to Baghdad, Iraq. That one was a little bit different than my first deployment. We still had some very similar missions, things like doing log packs. We had to take chow out to our units that were out at these COPs, and also bring them supplies and whatever things that they were maybe requesting from the main post that we were at. But additionally to that, we also did a lot of barrier missions where we had to haul barriers, concrete barriers, to maybe put on the sides of roads, to set up around maybe these COPs, or maybe even set up around police outposts. And those missions always took place at night, so we did a lot of night missions. You would usually sleep beforehand, go out on mission all night, and then come back very early in the morning. We'd usually have some kind of Iraqi civilian crane operator that was lifting the barriers off of our trucks and placing them where they needed to go. And we were simply just hauling them to where they needed to go. We'd maybe be hooking up the chains onto the barriers, and then the civilians would be picking them up with the crane and placing them in the spots where they were supposed to be. So most of my missions during the second tour were the log packs and barrier missions. There'll always be some knickknacks here and there, and it always really just depends on what your mission is when you're deployed. So typically as an 88 Mike, you can expect to be on the road a lot while you're deployed because you're hauling equipment and supplies and stuff from one location to other locations all across the area. So there you go, that's a little bit of a summary of what the lifestyle kind of is like for an 88 Mike. If there are things that I didn't answer in this video, just leave me some questions down in the comment section down below. The next MOS I will most likely be featuring is going to be an 11 Bravo, so also if you have questions about an 11 Bravo, leave me some questions down below and maybe I can make sure to include them in the interview process for that video. If you liked it, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Now I know you want to see more MOS specific videos. If you want to check out some recommended videos, try these ones out. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you want to see more Army content and videos like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I'm ChristopherChaos and I will see you next time. See ya.